Tell me what you're thinking.
Okay, so look, I'm really concerned that CBD is being treated effectively as a pharmaceutical product when hemp and hemp products have been used medically and for wellness purposes around the world for over 4,000 years. And it's great that the government is now acknowledging the medicinal benefits of hemp and cannabis, but they seem to be creating a whole range of barriers that are blocking the people in New Zealand who have the most expertise from getting into the new industry, which in turn is blocking access to the patients who need it. The courts have been excellent recently. The courts this year, every one of my clients who have been green fairies or growing cannabis for their own purposes have been so far given a discharge without conviction, because the courts are recognising that cannabis is beneficial for a range of health conditions, and at the moment we don't have a lawful route for people to safely and affordably access any kind of cannabis products. There's a few products that they can that they can import, but it's extremely expensive beyond the capacity of most people to pay, and those products have got only limited application. Whereas we've got this massive green fairy network in New Zealand that's very, very highly regarded by the sick people who use it, and increasingly by the courts, who are becoming very supportive of the green fairies, and in some cases also by the police. Now, we've got a real problem when the new regime comes in to work out how we can transition the green fairies who have been working illegally but effectively into this new kind of corporate model that the government's looking at. And it's been a problem all around the world when they've made cannabis legal, to work out where to draw the line to let new products in. Now, my view is that cannabis presents a huge opportunity to find new ways of doing things. So rather than trying to fit an exceptional product into little boxes that the law's created for historic purposes, let's instead work out what outcome we want, how we can have safe, affordable, accessible products that are fit for purpose, and how we can then design the law to make sure that the people that need those products can get them, and the people that have got the skill to make them can make them. And I don't hold out too much hope at the moment that the route that the government's going down is going to achieve that, although they have consulted, and they may come up with a solution, which would be fantastic if they do.
So what do you think about the Chris Woodney situation with New Zealand hemp brokers being served a notice to cease and desist the sales of no promises?
Yeah, look, it's really concerning again that the government is taking a heavy-handed approach rather than facilitating people who need these products from using them. I actually haven't spoken to Chris about, which part of the hemp plant is he using in that product, do you know?
Yeah, hemp seed oil and phytoflower.
Until recently, there was no restriction on feeding hemp products to animals, and one of the ways that people dispose, or licensed hemp growers dispose of their excess product and the product parts that they couldn't use was by animal food. And that's consistent with best practice around the world. Now, very mysteriously, and I don't understand why, a year or so ago, the government, the MPI, changed their rules to try and block hemp products being used for animals. Now, curiously, this was at almost exactly the same time that the government decided to allow it to be used for humans. So there's nothing rational about the decision that's been made that I can see in what's been made. And it's really bizarre. I'm dealing a lot with poisons, and in the case of poisons, the government doesn't seem to be too concerned about 1080 and Roundup and other poisons getting into animal meat, but all of a sudden they've come up with this concern about hemp, the traces of the hemp product getting into animal meat, even though they're widely regarded to benefit the animal and promote well-being.
Yeah, big difference between 1080 in your food system and cannabinoids.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference because 1080 is only going to be harmful and cannabinoids are only going to be benefit.
Yeah.
And yet the government's got it the wrong way round. They're pretty relaxed about spreading 1080 over land, and there's numerous cases where it's contaminating cows and other stock and deer and wild pigs and wild foods, and they don't seem to be too worried about that at all. In fact, they're using more 1080 than ever this year, and yet when we look at hemp, which is regarded as beneficial and supplements the endocannabinoid system, and it's used all around the world, they're trying to block the access. So I've actually, I'm about to get involved in looking at that issue for the hemp industry.
Right.
I mean, it is. There are.
It's really interesting that
there's no logic.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you pointed out that people that have the expertise are being blocked.
Yeah. Well, look, and it's interesting because the courts have given Rose Renton and other green fairies a discharge without conviction, specifically for the reason that they believe that they should be involved in the new medicinal cannabis industry in New Zealand. So whereas the government is saying you've been naughty, you broke the rules, the court's taking a much more positive, big picture look at the situation and saying, well, look, these are the people that understand how this plant works, and they've got good connections with the patients. They're doing a great job educating without these new laws, so why would we stop them? And there's been a lot of those cases where the courts have taken that view. It's not just one or two.
Wow, what's the disconnect between the government and the courts?
Well, the courts are supposed to be independent from the government, but on the other hand, they all apply the same law. I suspect the district courts are very pragmatic when it comes with, but they see people that are charged with an array of different crimes, and in the scheme of things, when you've got somebody in court who's sick or helping sick people, the judges must be scratching their heads and saying, hang on, why am I being asked to punish this person? You know, compared to they've got murderers and rapists and all sorts of other people before the court who have got, proper reason to be before the court, but why are the police wasting their time bringing people that are actually trying to help other people? And the only real criticism of these people is that they had to make a choice between an outdated law and helping people. So most people with any sense of compassion would help people. I went to the Select Committee hearing in April last year where they were looking at the cannabis law reform, and there were just people in and out all day with very much the same story, explaining how their medical condition had been responded so well to CBD oil and other cannabis products, and they'd been able to get off opioids and other pharmaceuticals that had had horrendous side effects, and instead being able to use a natural plant product that they either grew themselves or they got from a green fairy. And the Select Committee members started out, quite against cannabis, I believe, but listening to them as they went through the day, they started writing a longer and longer list of all these different medical conditions where people were saying, look, it's great for my Crohn's disease, and it's great for my daughter's epilepsy, and it's great for my mum who can't sleep at night when she gets, and it's great for my wife who's got cancer and she's suffering from intense pain, or she couldn't eat, or a whole range of different conditions. And in the end, they said, look, okay, let's just leave it up to the doctor, which is exactly what the Greens medicinal cannabis law reform bill said in the first place. If the doctor thinks the patient will benefit, well, why can't they use it? So they've almost come the whole circle to at least protect the patients who are using cannabis for what they call palliation. So basically, if they've got a serious disease that's not going to get better, they can't be prosecuted. But the massive problem we've still got at the moment is there's no legal way of growing the cannabis in the first place for those people to get. So they're either having to illegally grow it themselves, or get it from a green fairy who's illegally grown it, or get it from the black market from a bikie gang or whatever who's illegally grown it. And that's a really big problem. And my question to the government is, when they pass the new law, how are they going to address that? Because if they put in such high barriers that people can't grow their own or source it at an affordable price, then it's just going to create a whole underground industry again. They're not going to achieve anything. They've got a chance, and they've just got to think outside the square and be solutions-focused instead of coming up with a whole lot of pedantic rules and regulations that block the innovators. They've actually got to say, no, we want people to be able to use cannabis if they need it. How can we make this happen? People like Chris, who have been slogging away to break down the barriers and the prejudices against hemp for years and years. I mean, he's got to, these are the people that we need in the future with the new products. The Ministry of Health have just invented some arbitrary restrictions, which I don't believe are what the law says. They're just restrictions that they've invented. I've seen hemp permits where it says you can grow and process hemp, and then the Ministry of Health say, but processing it for people is extracting it, it's not processing it. Well, no, it's processing it. And if, the law doesn't say you can't process it for people. That's just an extra layer of rules that they've invented. So maybe it's a good thing that Chris's situation is going to get tested before the courts and we can actually come up with some useful answers for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not sure what patients are supposed to do in the meantime.
Well, what patients will do in the meantime, what would you do if you're dying, you're in pain, or you're caring for somebody who's dying or in pain, or who's got a chronic disorder where they can live a really great life if they can have supplementary cannabinoids, but without those, they're debilitated. People will find a way to do what they need to do. And it actually brings the law into disrepute, because if the law's not serving the people, it's not a good law.